Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network. This is our special Saturday edition called Step Up Your Game with Dan. I'm your host, Dan Handford, and I'll be discussing topics to help you make better decisions to increase your productivity, increase your sales, and improve your overall marketing. Visit toughdecisions.net to sign up for our free weekly entrepreneur email. Before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HandfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HandfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HandfordCapital.com. On the podcast with us today is Allison Maslan. Allison, thank you for being with us today. Welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I'm so excited to be here.
I want you to start us off. I know you have several things that we're going to talk about, coming up here pretty soon, especially with the launch of your book, Scale or Fail. I want you to talk to the listeners a little bit about your background and where you're coming from and what your current focus is right now.
Absolutely. Well, I've been an entrepreneur practically my whole life. Since I was 19 years old, I started my first business when I was in college, doing personalized poems for birthdays and anniversaries. And I thought, wow, this thing's cool. I was making $25 a pop. And then I pretty much found that I was unemployable. I couldn't hold a job for more than 2 weeks. So I thought, I've got to figure out this entrepreneurial thing or I am in big trouble. And so, lots of ups and downs. It's the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur over the years, but I have scaled 10 companies that I've really had a blast with. And so my last business, my 10th, I have been paying it forward and helping business owners grow and scale their companies.
Well, and I want you to talk about that word scale, because I know for different people that means different things as far as like the level of scaling and stuff like that. But what exactly, when you say scale or scaling, what exactly is that when you're talking about scaling?
I'm glad you asked that because I think sometimes people feel like, oh yeah, I know that, but they really don't know what it means. And they think of maybe the scale in the bathroom or something. Yeah. So scaling means that once you, in your current business model, that you hit your bandwidth, you hit a wall. And so many business owners are providing that one-to-one product or service. It's really taking that and creating a model that you can multiply at a great scale. So you're duplicating yourself, whatever your own personal genius is, and it's not a one-to-one, it's one-to-many.
Well, and I know that you have talked about, being able to scale 10 different businesses and, some of the walls that, you have hit. I'd like for you to kind of dive into some of those things because obviously when we talk about people who have had success, a lot of times we always focus on, what those successes are, but behind those successes, there's always, like you said, those walls that they've hit and those things that they have not done so well or they failed at and they've had to overcome to get to that level of success. So can you share a couple of those walls that maybe you've hit in your businesses as you've tried to scale them?
Definitely. I mean, you look at people that are very successful and you think, oh, that was so easy. And then you really dig behind and it was like the 20-year overnight success story, right? So in my earlier business, my first real business, I built a full service advertising and PR firm and it grew very quickly. I really had no idea what I was doing. I just kept saying yes. And, when people would say, do you do TV? Do you do radio? Do you do public relations? Sure, absolutely. And then I would walk out of their office going, oh my God, I have no idea how to do this. But I wasn't afraid to ask for help. And so I would hang out at the TV station and I would say, teach me everything I need to know. Or I would hang out at the printers, at 3 a.m. to watch those press checks to really learn that business. And so, we gained a lot of momentum. I took on clients like Ben & Jerry's and Supercuts and Charlotte Russe, and I was great at flying by the seat of my pants. But what happened, Dan, was that I didn't really know how to scale a business back then. I didn't know how to, I had a small team, but I didn't know how to delegate. And I was micromanaging. I was working 24/7. I did not have a life at all. And I was at complete burnout. And I ended up having a terrible car accident from the stress and, trying to raise my daughter, who was very young back then at the time as well. And, I almost died from the stress, seriously. And so when I recovered from that, I said, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I love the business world, but obviously I've got to learn how to do this in a way that I'm actually thriving and that I love my life. So I took a year and I really studied, what did I do right? Because I was doing some things right. And what did I do wrong? And I studied some of these companies that I was actually doing marketing for, like Ben & Jerry's, like Charlotte Russe, because they had really great company cultures. And I built 2 blueprints, one for growth, one for scale, and went on to build 9 more companies that I've had a blast with. But the issue that I had, so many business owners are in that same pain point where they got into business to create freedom, to have a passionate life, and they feel chained to their business, that they have this glorified job.
One of the things I was thinking about is when you mentioned, growth and the 2 blueprints you have, one for growth, one for scale. I think a lot of times we think of those as being synonymous. How would you differentiate growth versus scaling?
So growth, in the early stages, you're developing your product, you're trying to figure out who your market is, which can also change, as you scale as well. And also you're just trying to get sales in the door in the beginning. And as you start really getting that demand, then you've got to learn how to fill that supply. So a lot of times as people get into that 7-figure and beyond range, they have a real demand for their product or service, but they can't fulfill it, and they don't really know how to build a strong team that's excited about the vision, that's all in and taking ownership. And so they have people coming and going who are disengaged in their jobs. They're being a boss instead of a leader and inspiring people into action. And so they stay in that growth mode and never move on to the scale mode.
So it sounds to me like it's, if we go back to the E-Myth, by Michael Gerber, he talks about the technician and the technician trying to run the business. It sounds to me like it's a lot of times it can be in the startup phase, the technician kind of holding back some of the abilities to be able to, scale to the next level because of some of those bottlenecks, because of not being able to implement systems to be able to get them to that next level. Is that correct?
Definitely. And, I remember reading E-Myth years ago as well. Fantastic book. But yeah, it's like, okay, I love pies. I'm going to become a pie baker. And then there's a point where, you're just so sick of pies because it's like, your whole life. Or, maybe it is that you love the baking piece, but you're pulled away in all of the operations and sales. And that's not why you got into the business, right? And so it's really finding what is it in your business that you love, where is your superpower, and building a team around that so that you can 90% of the time be in that space. I call it your shine factor, where you shine. And then you have a well-oiled machine because you have all of the moving parts in your business run by people who are experts in those sectors. And then you duplicate yourself. So you take yourself out of the equation. If you still want to make pies, you can make pies, but it doesn't depend on you.
I think that's a big thing that you said there is finding your shine factor, like you said, because a lot of times, I see business owners and entrepreneurs trying to be, everything in the business. And I will say that my background is we have 5 medical offices and a couple online companies and various things that we're working on now in the real estate business. So we had our hands in multiple pots, but each one of the businesses that I've had to start up got to a point where I was the one holding the business back because I figured I could do everything And the moment that I could basically step out and start to delegate and let other people that are better at certain areas do those things is when we were really able to scale. Do you think that all businesses are able to scale?
I don't think all businesses are able to scale depending on the model they have. What I find is that once you hit that either mid 6-figure or 7-figure, and if you're the one that is the deliverable, then you will max out. Generally around 450,000. There's only so many hours in the day. And also, even if you have a product business, generally once you hit that 7-figure mark, or even like, let's say 3 to 5 million, you're going to have to recreate your business from that higher level. It's almost like you have to rebuild it because, let's say you're in a house, okay, and you grow in that house and you're going to run out of space. So you can't just keep adding on rooms if you don't rebuild the foundation of that house to be able to handle that growth.
So I can just sit here and think about, some of the listeners right now, and they're thinking about their business and they're thinking about what you're saying, and they're going, I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm in that position where you've been, where in the past you feel like you've hit that wall. And I know in your book, Scale or Fail, you help business owners kind of lay out a plan to try to scale their company. Can you share a couple of strategies that can help the listeners to be able to understand how they can, scale their business?
Definitely. And you know what? This is so many business owners are in this place. It's such a pain point. And so there's 2 avenues to look at. One is scaling your team, and then the other is creating revenue strategies for scaling. And I teach the steps for all of that in my new book, Scale or Fail. But first of all, on the team piece, because this is crucial, because if you scale the revenue piece and you don't scale the team piece, you're going to run out of bandwidth. So on the team piece, as you start building a team, it's really crucial that you work to co-create with your team. Instead of micromanaging, instead of just telling them what to do, you want them to take ownership and say, okay, what do you think is the best direction here? What strategy would you apply? How would you resolve this challenge? And you get them to take ownership of it so that they can be excited about it and be excited about the outcome, right? But most business owners, I call it in my book, this is phase 3, we call it the ringleader, because it feels like a circus. Because you're trying to micromanage everybody and every department in your company, and there's no way you can do that. And that's why business owners get stressed out and frustrated. And the team gets frustrated too.
Yeah, talking about the team component of it, I would say that is, for me, been one of the biggest things for me too, is being able to, even though you kind of, have in your head and your ideas is about, what might be the next step for you to take. A lot of times, even in my own businesses, even though I kind of know where I want to take the business or want the next decision that has to be made, when I have a meeting with my team, I'll describe them the situation and then kind of let them throw out some ideas. And 9 times out of 10, they come up with the strategy that I'm planning on anyway. But like you said, it helps them feel like they're co-creating, or they're part of the team, and they're part of what is that bigger and better thing that you guys are all working towards, instead of it always just being, the guy from the top or the woman from the top just pounding down, this is what we're going to do, this is what you're going to do. And it's just, and it makes them really feel part of an organization. And we had somebody on a couple of months ago that was talking about, the regenerative business. And it was Carol Sanford, and she talked about you cannot motivate somebody. They have to be able to motivate themselves. And one of the ways that you can do that is to do what you're saying, is allowing them to be part of the decision-making processes and be able to come up with, because now they actually feel like they're part of the actual business. They have that more ownership mentality.
Definitely. And, I often find that my team comes up with better ideas than I
That's true too. I will say that I've definitely had that happen.
Yeah. And I always give this metaphor. If you have children and you are constantly telling them how to do things or jumping in to save the day, then, they always know that that's going to happen, and they don't put the effort and energy in, and they don't spread their wings and fly. So it's a scary thing, Dan, because you're afraid that they're going to make a mistake. Oh my God, we're going to lose thousands of dollars on this big job. And right. So, but
that's happened before.
Yes, I know. And me too, many times. But what you hope is that it only happens once. And then if it happens once, it's like that mistake doesn't happen again. Because that's how we learn, right? We have to be willing to fail to be able to fly.
Well, and I think that that applies in so many different areas of life. Obviously, there's certain things that, you don't want to fail on to let them learn. Obviously, let's see what happens. Like when you're raising your children, you don't want to, let them stick their hand on a light socket so that they learn, But even when my wife and I are raising our 4 children that we have, we allow them to do things and make decisions as long as we know it's not going to be detrimental to them, to be able to allow them to be able to learn that if that doesn't work out, that it failed, and they got to figure out a way to get around it, instead of, just like, for example, my 3rd child, Chloe, I have these almonds that I'll sometimes have on my nightstand, and they're spicy. They're like not habanero. They're what's that green putty at a sushi restaurant?
Oh yeah, my husband gets that all the time, and I forget what it's called, but that is so spicy. Yeah,
so they actually have that coated on these nuts, and she knows what spicy is, and I'm like, those are spicy, and she goes, it's spicy, in her little voice. It's so cute. But she wanted to try it one day, and I'm like, well, if you want to try it, go ahead. It's spicy, And so she did. She tried it, and she kind of licked it, and she gave me this little look in her face, and guess what? She hasn't done it again.
Yeah, exactly.
But she learned. She learned that, that's going to happen. And so I would agree with you that there are definitely areas where they have to fail, and when they fail, that's where they're going to learn a lot of things too, and how not to fail again.
Exactly. And so it's that willingness to step back, and the message that you are giving is, I trust you and I believe in you. And people are going to thrive more in that environment than if they're in a chokehold, right? Nobody wants that. I don't want that.
Oh yeah. And, well, I even tell my management team that too. I'm like, I give a lot of authority to my management team. And, when I stepped out of my businesses as being the CEO and became the president and had to be more passive, and I have now a CEO that runs everything for me for my medical practices that I'm talking about, I told him before I promoted him to CEO, I said, just so you know, and his name's Jason. I said, all right, just so you know, Jason, I want to give you full authority to run this business the way you want to run it. Obviously, you've been working with me for 3.5 years, so you know how I like things to be done. And I said, I want you to feel free to make those decisions. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't pull you behind doors and, slap you upside the head for making a wrong decision, but I will never badmouth you in front of the other members of our team. That doesn't mean I won't slap you upside the head, not literally, but, figuratively, when you make a bad decision or a bad, choice. But I want you to feel like I will support you in those decisions that you make, even if you do fail. Obviously, I don't want you to fail, but if that happens, it happens, You got to give them that authority.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, and then they're going to take ownership, and they start asking questions like, how do we increase profits? How do we create a better customer experience? And you begin to see leaders step up on the team, and leaders that are emerging within the different divisions of your company. And this is where you're ultimately able to step back. And that's kind of why you got into business in the first place, right? And so, but that's scaling the team side. And then there's scaling the revenue side. So in my book, I give 17 ways to scale on the revenue side of the business. And so an example would be to take your deliverable, whatever that is, you're a financial planner, and then you create a signature process, and then you train a team of financial planners that has maybe they're certified in your signature process, and then they go out and multiply your impact. In my business, which is Pinnacle Global Network, we mentor business owners all over the world to grow and scale their companies. And in the beginning, it was me. Like, I was the one, and I quickly realized that I needed to build a team around the processes that I use to grow and scale companies. And so I have now a large team of CEOs that many of them have exited their companies. They have exited for, 8 figures and more. And they are mentoring our clients with my processes, tools, resources, experts, and so forth. And that way we're able to help a lot more people. So that's one example, is scaling your team. Another would be to taking your product or service and creating a subscription program around it, so you have monthly recurring revenue. And there are many advantages to this, and it can be done with any type of company. For instance, one of our clients has a staffing company. And you might think, well, how would you create a subscription program from a staffing company? Well, there are many requirements and legalities that are changing in HR all of the time. And companies spend a lot of money researching and trying to stay on top of these. So we help them create a certification program so that people pay a monthly fee and they get, the latest and greatest requirements in that industry so that they can remain compliant. So when you go to sell your business, if that's something that you plan on doing, if you have a recurring revenue, your business is going to have a valuation 3 to 5 times it would if you are a one and done static revenue.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about here with the revenue strategies, which I'm sure with the 10 businesses that you've had, I like to call it the shiny object syndrome, where we find this new product or service that might go in line with some of the things that we're doing. And we kind of get that, inability to say no, if you will. So can you share a little bit about what your philosophy is on, people that have a problem saying no to those shiny objects?
I think saying no is a lot harder than saying yes. And I also say no is the new yes, because when you say no, you're saying yes to yourself and yes to your business. And even though we get excited, we're the creative types, I'm the same way. And what I've learned is, okay, yes, I can do that, but not right now. So let's put that over in the bucket for later. And if you can stay with those 1 or 2 projects per quarter, and that's it, you're able to really dive deep, create traction, and create results. If you're diluted and you're going in so many directions, not only do you barely see the results that you want, how can you? Because you're not really giving it the focus you need, but you're also stressing out your team. I mean, you might feel that you can eat that whole sandwich, but you're making that decision that your team can keep up with you as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this whole, dilution of, when you're trying to create revenue strategies and you try to add services to your product offering or whatever that don't necessarily, fit in line with what you're trying to provide. I'll give you an example. I've been guilty of this in my businesses. And one of the things recently that happened about 2 years ago is in our medical practices, we focus primarily on regenerative medicine. So prolotherapy, platelet-rich plasma therapy, that PRP, stem cell therapy, those kind of things, and primarily work with people who have degenerative joints, arthritis in their joints, various things like that. And these treatments are very effective with that, as well as helping the surrounding ligaments. Well, we wanted to add some additional services. And so we actually started adding 2 things. One is actually Botox, cosmetic Botox, as well as Botox for like migraines and things like that. And then we also added bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Both of those things very effective for their purposes. But what we found is that it started to dilute us. And then in our markets, people were getting confused about who we really were. They were like, are you the Botox specialist or are you the regenerative medicine specialist? And so there's this, phrase that I've heard, for at least probably the last 10 or 15 years, that is, a confused mind always says no. And if you put too many products or services in your product offering, that's exactly what can happen. Your customer base and your market goes, who are those people and what do they really do? You want to be very clear on that. And when you start to add too many things and you start to dilute it, people in the market are like, what do these people actually do? And then nobody does anything with you.
It's so true. In fact, when you were saying that, that was the exact quote. The confused mind says no, what came to my head. And, we feel like, oh, the more we give, the better, the more value. But if, they don't get it immediately in this distracted society that we live in, that people are, doing 10 things at once, pulled in all kinds of directions, if you don't capture their attention immediately and that they understand, you have lost them. They did a study recently, and I can't remember where I read this, but they had a grocery store with just, gourmet products, and they had all these types of olive oil on the shelf from all over the world. And so you would think that they would have the highest sales in olive oil because they had more than any of the other stores around. But actually their sales were really low because people would stand there and they would get overwhelmed and not know what to choose. Therefore, they didn't choose anything. So it's how you describe your business, number one. We talk at that elevator pitch. And, I have strategies in my book around that is just so succinct and really focused on results so that people get it. And also that, you're not trying to accomplish too many things. You can really niche it out and be very singular focused. And then people know that you're the one to solve that problem, whether they need it for themselves or they want to refer you to somebody else.
That's the biggest thing is that when people have that problem, your name should pop into their head. That's really what you want is you want to have that just pop in their head, whether, like you said, whether they're the one with the problem, they know someone with a problem, but they can, in that conversation, immediately think of you. Well, Allison, I really appreciate you taking some time with us today. Do you have a thought that you want to leave us with?
I have one saying that has been with me over the years, Dan, and I think it kind of, summarizes everything that we've been talking about, and also that's in my book, Scale or Fail, which I'm excited for everybody to get their hands on. And it's this: make decisions from where you're going, not from where you're at.
That's a great quote. Make decisions from where you're going, but not from where you're at.
Exactly. Get clear on what you want to create. That's the S in scale is strategic vision. Get clear. Where do you want to be in 3 years? What do you want your business to look like? What do you want your life to look like? How do you want to spend your time? Who do you want to surround yourself with? And pretend that you're there already. Right now, you're already there. You've achieved it. From that place, what are the decisions you're going to make? And that's how you propel yourself quickly.
Now you have a free gift for our listeners, right?
We do. And it's the 17 scale strategies download and a video training. So it goes along with my new book, Scale or Fail. And that link is scaleorfail.com/Dan book. scaleorfail.com/Dan book. That's how to get the book. And then to get the free gift, it's scaleorfail.com/Dan gift.
Great. And I'll make sure that the listeners who are driving down the road and don't have a chance to write that down, it'll be in our show notes, which can be found at toughdecisions.net. That is going to be scaleorfail.com/Dan book to get a copy of her new book, Scale or Fail, or you can get a free gift for our listeners at scaleorfail.com/Dan gift. What's the best way for our listeners to contact you or connect with you?
Yes, thanks for asking. You can go to my website, AllisonMaslan.com. And also, if you have a direct question, just email us at support@AllisonMaslan.com.
Well, Allison, thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast. You've shared a lot of golden nuggets throughout, and look forward to having you on a future podcast. And, keep us posted on how things are going with your book as well.
I will, Dan. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.